Hello and welcome back. I'm Randy Bueller, joined now by Cyrus Corman Gill. Safely through to the playoffs, but you're coming off of a loss. Did not actually win the bye. Andreas Peterson also will be joining you in the playoffs.
Yeah, Andreas really has my number. He's 2-0 against me now in the Vintage Super League. I have defeated everyone but him. I was looking to get some revenge tonight, but I think I've said this about a dozen times on the show so far. When Pitch Dread keeps 7, it beats basically any deck. And he had 2 or 3 free pieces of interaction plus turn 1 Bazaar. And I had some tough decisions to make, and I maybe didn't make all of them correctly. But, it's just when a deck doesn't need to use any mana to cast any of its spells, it's hard to catch up if they keep 7 cards.
Yeah, I thought the decision in Game 3 there was super interesting, actually, where you play the Tormod's Crypt and he Force of Wills it, and you're sitting with an Ancestral, a Force, and a blue card trying to figure out, do you defend the Tormod's Crypt? Do you wait and defend the Ancestral? It was an interesting spot. I know chat was kind of split, I think, on whether you were supposed to force to sort of get that hate card down.
Yeah, obviously that's a pretty interesting decision. So, he is on 4 missteps, and he also is on 4 Mindbreak Traps. That's 8 cards he could have in hand that counter my Ancestral Recall. And since if I fight over that, and then I have Tormod's Crypt, Mox Opal, I can either not blow the Crypt and have a card for PO, or I'm just never winning that game. There's basically very few combination of cards that don't involve Ancestral Recall or Time Twister. Then they get me back in that game, and I'd already used the Ancestral. So I decided that since he had so many cards that can counter the Ancestral, the way I get back in that game is having that resolve. So, because Tormod's Crypt doesn't just beat Dredge. If that was a Graph Digger's Cage, I would fight over it.
That's fair.
But it slows him down by maybe 2 turns, but my hand does absolutely nothing, and he has a Bazaar in play. So that was a really tough decision, and I decided, looking at the list, he has 8 cards that counter Ancestral, and I think that's more valuable than buying myself 1 or 2 turns. Because against Dredge specifically, and I mean any deck in Vintage, is oftentimes I don't think it gets super better to wait. You don't want to be overly patient in this format, and you don't want to. Every deck is so powerful; they'll fight through any amount of hate. And I had to make a play to try to win the game, not to not lose. And I think I made the correct play, and it was obviously a tough call, though.
Yeah, I think I agree that you needed the Ancestral Resolve. The one thing that you maybe could have sequenced a little differently is if you play a land before the Tormod's Crypt, then you can respond with Ancestral and see if you need to defend it or not before you make the decision on the initial Tormod's Crypt.
Yeah, I like that better. That makes sense.
There's also, speaking of sequencing, when you Time Twisted in the second game, I was surprised you didn't use you wanted your mana vault untapped. Was that like Magic Online spent you that was floating and you didn't get the chance to spend colorless, or was that an actual?
I made that decision intentionally. The thing is that they're less than 40% to have Bazaar in their new hand. Yeah. And I just thought one of the ways I lose this game is getting bottlenecked on mana or something, even drawing 7 fresh cards.
Okay.
And I made the decision intentionally to leave my mana vault untapped. Just because there was no way I mean, he's less than 40% to have a Bazaar there. Or maybe exactly like 50% with a draw step, or something. I don't know the exact percentages, but it's not that likely that he is able to cast a Bazaar. And I decided I'd rather have the mana vault untapped, and I didn't do a ton of reasoning behind it, but it just felt correct to me. Okay. But I did get a message. Whenever I make a mistake, I have a whole host of Storm players that text me. I remember in Eternal Weekend, the only thing I think worse than looking at the painting in Eternal Weekend and missing Lethal to not get it is having about 30 text messages right afterwards telling you what you did wrong. But now I'm on the VSL having a good time. Pitch Dredge is one of my favorite decks, and it was really cool to see in action. I'm obviously stoked Andreas was able to beat me, and I'm 2-0 against Hall of Famers despite my best efforts to make mistakes so far. So I'm feeling pretty good.
Very nice. Well, sounds like our players are ready. We will head down to the last match of the night and find out who our third playoff competitor is going to be. All right, Andy Markiton with his trusty Shops deck. On the top of the screen, must win this game if he wants to advance to the playoffs. Seth Manfield finally has an Oath of Druids in his opening hand. Does not have a Forbidden Orchard or a Mox this time around. Also needs this win if he's going to make the playoffs. 4-2 is the magic number. Cyrus is 4-2. He's through. Andreas Peterson explained to us at the pregame show tonight he thought Dredge was going to be a good metagame call. He didn't think people would have a lot of hate, and it worked out for him. He got the 2-1 that he needed. to join Cyrus in the playoffs, we are going to get 3 playoff competitors out of this really tough pod. That's kind of you guys have dealt out the wins in such a way as to get the maximum number of people through. No buys, though. Nobody through to the semifinals yet.
Yeah, I felt like you gave Andreas and I some tough pairings. We got the 2 best vintage players in the world in Andy Markiton and Rich Day. We got both the Hall of Famers in the VSL, and we had to play against each other twice.
Wait a minute. There's 3 Hall of Famers
3
in the
Hall of
VSL.
Famers, of course. Yeah,
I'm saying that you'll get me in the playoffs. That's my plan.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. My apologies. I sometimes forget you play in it too because you're obviously on commentary every week. But so it feels like you're with us. Okay, so this hand by Andy is pretty good because he has 2 Mishra's Workshops in his opening hand, and Mishra's Workshop's really good. Also has Foundry Inspector, which is a fairly new card to the deck, about 2 years old, and it really just enables these busted starts where you get to just dump your entire hand here with the Sphere and Resistance in play. It really breaks the symmetry, so you have Workshop and Sphere and Foundry Inspector to break the symmetry. And then Seth has what he's looking for. Misstep is obviously dead in this matchup except for the 1 Soul Ring. But he has an Oath of Druids, and that's oftentimes what you're looking for.
God, Sphere on the play. Seems so unfair. Sorry, I'm a Blue Mage at heart. I always feel sympathy. The poor guy's got his Ancestral Recall. He can't even cast it.
Turn I can 2, definitely...
He can cast it, I guess.
I do not like when my spells cost 1 more mana.
Yeah.
I like to cast a lot of spells, and I like when they're all discounted if they cost anything.
Fair enough.
All right, so they're going to have another Sphere here, I imagine.
Yeah, I assume Seth will figure that out and realize that he needs to Ancestral's Response. He did not realize it.
Yeah, now he's just so far behind.
Yeah, Seth needed to Ancestral's Response there. I think that was just a little bit of new to vintage.
Yeah, I mean, you can't even strip mine here. Like, sometimes strip mine can get you back in the game against a turn 1 Sphere because they can't cast spells too, but not against double Workshop and already have threats on board. You need to use that to keep yourself in the game. That happens more against Trinisphere, but
yeah, totally. Sometimes you nail the Workshop, and now they're pinched on mana. But I mean, alone was going to give Andy enough. Yeah, definitely be the guy that misses here.
Yeah, Andy's just so far ahead now. I mean, you have the Ballista plus the Ravager, which can make for really quick lethal. You even have the Creature Land, which is going to get sacrificed here to put another counter on it. So this should be close to lethal next turn, right? I think it should be exactly lethal or something around there.
God, the Spheres have done so much work. Like, the single card Oath of Druids is often all you need to resolve in this matchup. I do think Seth Manfield has a matchup advantage here that, being able to feast on Shops decks is part of the reason to play Oath of Druids in the first place. But not this game, not when it's Workshop for Sphere and second Sphere.
And this is one thing I think that's really interesting about the Workshops deck is that it doesn't play all the busted blue cards, but more than anything, it's consistent. And I know in other formats, specifically Legacy and Modern, people talk a lot about, just have creatures in your deck, because when the more powerful decks just don't get to do their thing necessarily, especially when you have Sphere Resistance down, you just win because you have creatures and you're always doing something. And you have creature lands and you have such a high density of redundant spells that, Workshops has bad matchups, but its good hands still just beat anything usually because you have turn 1 lock piece, turn 2 lock piece, and then you have threats to follow up. You're not just dirtling around like the old Workshop decks, like smokestacks and stuff.
Oh yeah, no, back in the day when they were trying to set up some kind of smokestack lock, you felt like you had time to actually play land to get out from under those spheres, but just the clock has been turbocharged in recent years. Kaladesh is a little while back. Foundry Inspector's been around for a couple of years now, but between Foundry Inspector, Ballista, Overseer, the clock's gotten so much faster in recent years.
Yeah, we've seen much. There's not so many Triskelions running around unless your Rich Shade still likes to play a Trike, but
they used to have to tap 6 for a Triskelion. I remember those days.
You're not seeing Kodoltha Forge Masters anymore. You're seeing a Walking Ballista, which is obviously so powerful with Ravager. And we've seen this combination of artifact creatures in multiple formats now. Walking Ballista has kind of become a multiple format all-star from Modern, Legacy, Vintage. Really powerful card. I really like this version of Workshops. I think it tends to be pretty interesting to play against. I think they did a pretty good job with the restrictions and everything so that it's not oppressive anymore. Still probably the best deck, or up there with Paradoxical Outcome, I think. But it's a lot more fun playing against creatures and interacting rather than just being completely locked out of the game.
Yeah, the creature aggro side of the deck seems perfectly reasonable and interesting. The spheres part is what always gets me. Yeah, Andy took the pause there. He had his combo set up. Obviously, Ravager can jump a bunch of +1/+1 counters on Ballista, shoot the opponent. Andy's like, is there anything because Seth could, in theory, have cast a 1-mana spell, but there just isn't one in his list that could break that up. So Andy goes for it, and we're off to sideboarding.
Yeah, so
and Andy, by the way, I was talking earlier about how Blazing Archon shuts down the Dredge deck. It turns the Shops deck into just a Walking Ballista deck. Like, Andy can't remove a Blazing Archon from play. It is all but lethal.
You can metamorph it, which leads to a pretty interesting spot. And then it looks like Andy has a Karakas in his sideboard, but I don't think Blazing Archon is a legendary creature.
It's not a legend. No, it is not a legend. I was testing an Eldrazi deck, and I'm like, I've got my Karakas. I should be fine. What's he going to oath out? Oh, Blazing Archon, which my Eldrazi deck is completely cold to, could not use Karakas to bounce it, and could not deal damage anymore. So definitely been on the wrong side of that. I believe Andy is down to just Walking Ballista is what happens. I mean, metamorphing it
doesn't really do anything.
No, you just die to like Niv Mizzet eventually, right?
Jace and everything, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But what's interesting here is this Niv Mizzet card that's been added to the Oath decks, and I think when the set came out, everyone was looking at different cards. I think this was the same set as Creeping Chill and Arclight Phoenix, and then who would have thought that Niv Mizzet would be the real all-star card that's seeing tons of play in Vintage, and now we have Lavinia in the new set. So there have been some heavy hitters in these legendary creature slots, and the legendary multicolored cards are pretty interesting from design perspective. It seems like because they let you create more powerful cards that are restrictive on mana cost, like blue, 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 red, red, red. Like you're not going to be casting that often. But in Vintage, you have ways to cheat on mana. You have Moxen, you have Oath of Druids, obviously. So you get to see this really powerful card. And man, this card is a nightmare to play against. I thought it was kind of a joke, like when the first time someone played it against me, and I was trying to do something, I was like, well, I just lose. I can't do anything.
I have not been on the receiving end of a Niv Mizzet beating yet. I'm not sure I buy it's being played everywhere, but
I play against Brian Kelly a lot, so.
Oh, okay.
I feel like I've been on the receiving end of a lot of Brian Kelly nonsense cards.
Got it.
Which we'll get to see again in the Vintage Super League.
Yeah, he's up week after next.
All right, so obviously a great hand from Seth. He has a lot of fast mana on turn 1. He also has the Ancient Grudge and the Abrade.
It's like Seth, not only does he have the matchup advantage, but his deck feels like it's almost pre-sideboarded for this matchup. 3 Abrades and 2 Ancient Grudges all in his main deck.
Yeah, I think Seth and I both pre-boarded for Andy. I played, in my flex slot, I played 2 Hurkyl's Recalls and 2 Repeals, obviously. And then my flex slot today, which usually this is an anti-blue card, I played a Chain of Vapor. Because I was pretty worried about that humans deck Andreas was talking about. He did get me. But
yeah, I saw you took out the fish.
Yeah, the fish or the fluster could be there. And I decided that I wanted to have a Chain of Vapor. And then I'm actually playing the Karns for humans and Eldrazi as well. Obviously, they came in against the 10 Pyroblast deck. So Andy's hand. So brought in Grafdigger's Cage. Grafdigger's Cage is obviously a powerful card against Oath. Seth does have a lot of ways to destroy things. Doesn't play the Lotus, which I guess makes sense. So you don't want to get it revoked. So he's going to be able to play a lot of things here.
Boundary Inspector's discount is going to make the Grafdigger's Cage free. Can't play anything else, can he?
No, yeah, that's it. But I mean, 3 spells on turn 1 is pretty powerful. And then he'll obviously, if he finds a log piece or something, he has the Metamorphs. And then, this isn't going to line up super well against a Braid Grudge, but they're both kind of just drawing dead. So interesting. Andy was really surprised with this sequencing where he does things I would not do. I don't ever play workshops. And he does things like hold his hate cards in matchups. And I always find that really interesting.
I mean, he doesn't, I like it here. Why give Seth the information? Seth may go out of his way to go get an Oath of Druids that he can't necessarily resolve.
Yep. Really impressing me. Andy really impressed me with his play with this workshops deck.
Yeah, no, I watched him. I watched over his shoulder for a bunch of rounds at several Eternal weekends. So I don't know. I've stopped being surprised when he does interesting things that work out well. It's one of
Yeah,
those sort of like, oh yeah,
just that's how he drew it up.
that's what he does.
So here's the Revoker, which will probably name. It could name Dak Faden.
Dak Faden is the enemy from Shop's perspective.
I mean, it's
there are
gonna
some
get
boxes sitting there that you could name, but
yeah. And since Seth has the upbraided hand, he decided to not go ahead and grudge the Ruby, which I think is the obviously correct play. And when an opponent has a British Workshop in play, you don't really want to try and constrict them on mana when every card in their deck costs probably. I think just except for the Lodestone, everything costs 3 basically or less.
yeah, but Andy's probably going to notice that, right? Seth could have responded to Grafdigger's Cage with flashback on Ancient Grudge and chose not to, which is I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's probably a tell that Andy would pick up on.
Yeah, so I think it does make sense regardless to not grudge there, but some people would, and it definitely makes it more likely that you have something like an Abrade in your hand. So I think we'll probably see an Abrade on. You can see like an Abrade on the cage, and then grudge something, and then the Revoker did name Dak, which makes a lot of sense here. You don't really want to try to fight your opponent on mana when you don't have any sphere effects and they have 4 mana sources in play, because they can cast most of their spells in their deck with 3 mana still. So you name the one that's the best against you here, which is Dak Faden.
Feels like that Abrade definitely gets pointed at Grafdigger's Cage at some point. I mean, you want to be able to flashback your Ancient Grudge.
Yeah. And then I think you probably hit the Revoker. Interestingly, you could just wait here to see.
Yeah, he's not forced to.
Yeah.
Unless he decides he needs to stem the bleeding from the beatdown.
Mm-hmm. And there's nothing Andy could draw or really have that punishes you for doing like this. And you get to choose, and then maybe if a Metamorph comes down, it's advantageous for you somehow. I mean, anything Metamorph copies here is going to be pretty annoying, because it's going to be another creature. And obviously, Seth has not been great at drawing Oath of Druids and casting it tonight so far. I don't think he's gotten an Oath trigger off.
Yeah, I think he had it set up once in a game that he already had control of and got the concession, but
yeah,
he hasn't won a match. I think he's won that one game. All right, response to Metamorph, that is going to trigger Seth.
Yeah, and I think
his artifact removal.
You probably want to hit the Revoker here, because probably how you win this game is drawing a Dak Faden.
I was thinking Revoker as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to suck that you're taking like 8 a turn at this point. But again, you have to play to increase your outs. So I think I would hit the Revoker here, because Andy still has 2 cards in. So he hits the Foundry Inspector. He decides the damage is going to add up too quickly, which I think is reasonable. Just with 2 cards in hand and a creature land already in play, it's like if Andy has another threat, this doesn't line up super well. But I mean, I think he's playing 2 Dax anyway, so what are the chances he even really draws it? It makes sense. What do you name here? Maybe Jace? Or maybe just activate it again.
I think I would name one of the Moxes that's in play. Benches mana a little bit. Guess they're both off-color Moxes.
Yeah, they're both off-color. It seems reasonable if you had since you have the Phyrexian Metamorph also, and you can hit both of them. But I think it makes sense to name Dak here. So Andy really showing that's what he's really afraid of, and Dak is now just shut off for the rest of the thing. I mean, you could destroy both of these, but destroying both of these and drawing a Dak, it's a lot of cards. So I think that Seth's probably gonna have to go to the Oath of Druids route this game.
Yeah, that card seems really good. It seems like you could build a whole deck around it.
Yeah.
You have to draw it, though.
Yeah, that is, and have your opponent have creatures.
Well, we're halfway there.
Yeah. 4 copies in the deck, though. So this Metamorph is probably going to copy Revoker again. And I wonder what this one names. This one, it would seem reasonable to name. Probably not Jace, because Jace just doesn't do much here. Can name a Mox now. Name Gristlebrand, which is a bit aggressive. I think you probably should still lose to the 7/7 Flying Lifelinker, but you could name Gristlebrand.
You know what? Seth's with holding that Black Lotus in his hand can actually hard cast a Blazing Archon.
Yeah, and clever play by him holding the Lotus to play around Revoker, because Revoker
Right.
is not going to name a Lotus is on play. I really like that against, even though it feels bad against the Sphere Resistance deck, obviously Mana's not a bottleneck here, and you'd rather sandbag it. And also, it's a card that you can pitch to deck, you can brainstorm it away. It has multiple uses, so. Man, these Oath decks are pretty cool. They have such a great history where, especially if you look at the history of Storm decks, where you saw Storm decks start to adopt Oath of Druids, like Burning Long became like Burning Oath, so that you could just have, you used to play Oath in your sideboard to bring in to beat the Workshops deck, and then you started playing it main to get Gristlebrand. That deck's a ton of fun, but it's unfortunately pretty bad against Mental Misstep.
Jace the Mind Sculptor is the name.
I like that name. I mean, I think that you have to think about what are the most powerful cards that could happen here. You can't name Oath of Druids, obviously, because it's a triggered ability. All right, this would be the turn to draw it. Okay, Brainstorm.
All right. The crazy part is I think drawing Blazing Archon is just as good as drawing an Oath of Druids. I feel like he's drawing for 6 cards here.
Yeah, Andy and I.
There's the Oath.
We're talking about. Oh, here's a Nature's Claim and an Oath, so that's pretty strong. I think you put back the DAC. There's two Revokers on it, so even though Lotus doesn't do much for you here. Man, what a powerful card.
DAC in the library.
So did you play one of the original Oath decks?
Yes.
What was the threat then?
Oh my god. I played it at US Nationals like the first weekend Exodus was legal. And we were one of the only people to find it, which was kind of awesome. We played it green-white, grindy, and my creature, you'll never guess if you haven't seen this deck. It was Archangel.
Yeah, they did a flashback standard gauntlet on Mojo.
Yeah, that was my fault. I helped put that gauntlet together, so I kind of snuck it in there.
I just kept getting that deck, the Archangel deck, and I was trying to remember what the name of that card was, and I was just so bad at it. I was like, this isn't a combo really at all. It feels like you had to keep Gaia's Blessing yourself, I think. And
it was so grindy. They did 90-minute rounds. They did 90-minute rounds at Nationals. Is part of the reason we could get away with that. So
it just took me so long to play. I just didn't play the gauntlet anymore because I also wasn't very good at it.
It was probably a mistake to put it into the gauntlet for that reason. I wasn't thinking about the.
It was cool though. I just got it like 3 times in a row and I couldn't believe it. So we're gonna get Oath here. We're gonna see what we're gonna hit, and I think basically any target. So Gristlebrand is not as good as Blazing Archon here.
Nope.
Time Walk is pretty good. Time Walk plus Gristlebrand is pretty good because now Seth is gonna be able to get another target here.
Yeah.
And the game is just gonna be. I think that Seth has it pretty firmly in control here.
Agreed.
I guess, let's see. Even if Montolio, if Andy draws his Caracas, Seth is in a position where he can just hardcast his threats.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Ancestral. What a game. Yeah. Andy doesn't even need to see the Ancestral. I know that Seth remarked that he did like that card. It's a pretty fun card to play with. And especially when you come from casting a lot of Brainstorms like a Legacy. You're like, the first time I cast, I was like, wait, I don't need to put anything back. So it looks like the Niv Mizzet came out, and then I think this Seth's cyber plan of having the Oath target he wants to hit go up to a 2 of is really interesting, having the extra Gristlebrand and the Archon on the board, and then the extra land obviously coming in. Noticeably, he cut a Force of Will, and he also cut the Jace. And I think cutting Force of Will on the play makes more sense because you'll be able to deploy your Shatter effects. And I like Jace against this deck because against resource denial decks, Jace is just so powerful, but you know, it might map out that the Jace is just not that good against the deck with a ton of creatures, including creature lands. So it makes sense that's what the game plan you're on, especially with 4 Revokers.
I don't love Force Will in this matchup. Plus, you want all the removal. Like, what are the bad cards in this deck? Every Lightning Bolt and a Braid you can get your hands on is gold. You got your Oath package, which is
Flusterstorm, Misstep, Power Blast, obviously all dead.
Yeah, those are already gone. But your Force of Will is competing for space with what, like a Preordain?
Yeah, it looks like the cards in the cyber that it could be a Jace, another Gristlebrand, and that's about it. Mindbreak Trap is sometimes.
Oh, you're thinking about taking another Force of Will out. Yeah, I'm looking at he keeps thinking about maybe bringing the 4th one back in.
Oh yeah, I think it can be better than Probe. I don't think Probe is very good in this matchup, especially if you don't have a payoff card for it. It just the info isn't almost ever worth 2 life, and it's not worth paying 2 mana to draw a card with a Spear out. And you don't have a payoff like Young Pyromancer. You do have Cruise and Dig, but I generally tend to cut Gutaxian Probe in the decks I play against Workshops.
I'll buy that. I often cut it as well.
It's 0 mana, but the effect for 2 life is relevant.
Is it really 0 mana?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so interesting hand from Andy here. He has a turn 1 Chalice, he has a Caracas, but he doesn't have any threats. He has Metamorph, which could be a thing later, but right now it's not anything. And then Seth's hand is really strong.
I think Andy definitely had to mulligan that. There's just no resistors and no creatures. You can't keep the Chalice is basically the only thing. It's like 6 blanks and a Chalice.
Yeah, I agree with shipping that.
Although I guess if you Chalice 1 and then Metamorph it, you get the Metamorph copy as a 0.
Yeah, I think that's just not good enough against the deck that plays the 2-drop slot is what's so bad against you, or so good against you with all the Shatters and the Oath of Druids. But it certainly is a consideration. So Andy going to go ahead and lead on Wasteland Soul Ring here. And Seth's hand is just so strong. He gets to force whatever the most relevant play is. And then he also has Ancient Grudge and Oath of Druids and Library on the draw. Yeah. All those libraries going to get wastelanded. So we might see him just play Misty Rainforest so that because that can't get wastelanded. And then he gets to go turn 2, just fetch Volcanic Island or fetch whatever, play Oath of Druids. And, it's going to be hard to lose from there, especially when you have an Ancient Grudge for Grafdigger's Cages and Force of Will backup.
Sounds right. Wow, he's going to Force of Will Soul Ring? This is interesting. It's aggressive, but it's not crazy. It's definitely a fresh eyes on the format sort of a play. But you're like, look, my opponent just mulliganed to 6. He led on a Wasteland as his turn 1 land. And this Soul Ring looks super important. That's like if I Force of Will the Soul Ring, I'm not going to have to Force of Will the Sphere and then the Thorn and then the whatever. And I'm looking at Andy's hand and Seth's play looks brilliant.
And also what's interesting here is that then he draws Workshop. But what's interesting is that Andy can't really afford to Wasteland if you Force of Will the Soul Ring too. So you're effectively saving yourself a land. So but of course, Mistress Workshop is drawn off the top, and now he has Black Lotus every turn. But I still think that, Andy's going to be able to Walking Ballista, destroy his own creature, and start attacking with Factory, which does get around Oath of Druids to some degree. But this Oath of Druids is going to be so powerful here.
Yeah, I do think Andy's capable of slow rolling Mistress Workshop in a draw like that. That's the one flaw in Seth's play, is I think that he saw the turn 1 Wasteland and assumed there was no Workshop. Now, he was right, so I don't know.
What it comes up a lot is the forcing the mana is against the Eldrazi and Humans decks because they have the Cavernous where it gets really tricky. You're like, I think I just have to force this because next turn they can play Cavernous Souls and I can't counter anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really interesting when you're seeing I think Andy's one of the best vintage players in the world, and Seth is obviously one of the best players in the world. And it gets really interesting when you get to leveling in situations like this where you think, would my opponent slow rolls? Because the obvious thing is, of course I lead on Workshop. It makes 3 mana. Right. But maybe I can't beat a Force of Will, so I lead on Soul Ring to make my opponent force. Obviously, you wouldn't misstep as there's only one misstep target in the deck. Well, there's Grafdigger's Cage. But I still think you cut the missteps.
Yeah, and Seth did. Yeah, Seth's play looks great until Andy top decked the Workshop. Now I don't know what happens. Go ahead and slam Oath here.
Yeah.
It means your library is going to get wasted, but whatever. After the Force of Will play, the library is basically just a taps for colorless land anyway.
Okay, so I think what we're going to see here is, he might let him have a library for a few turns to guarantee damage with the Factory, because he can always just wasteland in response to an Ancestral or something.
Yeah, he might consider wasting the Tropical, in fact.
I think that is a reasonable play.
I think Seth's expecting him to waste the Tropical, which is why he got a Tropical while holding one. Did not.
Yeah, even with a red card in hand. So,
whoa, is Andy going to go wide here? Play the 2 Revokers?
No. Putting a counter on it here.
I see.
And then he gets to waste.
He's basically tapping Mana Vault for 2 damage.
Yeah, he's going to go ahead and gets in for 6 here, and then that does put Seth on a 6-turn clock. Obviously, Ancient Grudge is going to change that, but I think that the plan now is
Ancient Grudge doesn't change it until Seth finds red mana.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a Treasure Cruise here, which will come in probably in a few turns, and I think that Andy just feels like he needs to get in with the Revokers. So he's not going to wasteland for that same, the factories, because he can't play the Revokers. So
yeah, he needs to tap that wasteland for colorless to activate Mistress Factory. You're right.
Creature lands obviously very powerful. We see Mistress Factory is a 4-of in several decks, a standstill deck, which we haven't gotten to see yet on the Vintage Super League, but I did consider playing because I thought it would be very strong in this pod. Plays 4 as well, or 3. They usually play a Fairy Conclave in that last slot. Vintage staple Fairy Conclave.
Sometimes people play Moat.
Yeah.
Fly over.
My friend, actually, I think you commented his match. My friend Elliot top-aided champs with we play at the same local game store in Berkeley, Eudaimonia, with Steve Mandinian and Ibrahim Aldridge, who also top-aided champs, and a few other really great players. Eric Virgo, double top-aider.
Yeah, sure.
We all play at that game store, and I was really excited for him. And I remember his winning, and I think he had Moat plus Stony Silence going against Workshops. And he after the match, he told me, he said, I asked him, because he's borrowing some of the power, and I asked him about that Moat, and he's like, yeah, I think that Moat was probably the best card I ever bought. It was worth every penny. Because they got him in the top 8 of champs. What a funny card. Oh, so another factory here is so interesting. So now Seth's on a 4-turn clock. And he doesn't have the red mana because he elected to get the Tropical Island.
Yeah, he skipped his land drop there too. He keeps trying to bait that wasteland.
Yeah.
He's also building up the library, I guess.
Yeah, I think you build up library there. Is correct. But he's on a 4-turn clock now. Because these factory workers can pump each other. The assembly workers, I guess, is the creature type. Trying to think. I don't know how many other assembly workers are.
There's like one.
There's an Urza subtype land that makes a 2/2, and then I think there's some weird one from that crazy Future Sight set they made that has a reference to everything.
Here comes Mistress Factory for 2.
So he decided that it was worth it to wasteland there rather than pump the factory. Oh, there's Gristlebrand. Not exactly the card you want here. If you've already committed to going to library, you wait another turn. Wow, these factories are so interesting. The subgame they create with Oath of Druid, they're just so powerful. I love this Workshop's mana base where it just is so streamlined with the wastelands, the strip mine. Every land is so powerful in here. So the Revoker is kind of interesting because you can play the Revoker.
Oh yeah, it's very interesting. It plops the counters on the Mistress Factory.
Yeah, and that really speeds up the clock a lot here.
Yeah, and eats the Mana Vault for whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of a sudden this is 4 from the factory.
Yeah, this is certainly a lot better. That was a good draw. The Revoker is such a powerful card. When I first got into Magic was when Phyrexian Revoker had just first been printed, and Skull Clamp was legal at the time too, and I just remember looking at those decks and being like, wow, Magic is sweet.
Yeah. Not convinced everyone agreed with you that year, but...
Yeah, a lot of bans and restrictions happen. But now, you get to play them in this format. It's funny, it's always funny looking at creatures where basically all the spells and lands are old bordered in Vintage, and all the creatures are new bordered, it feels like.
Totally. All right, Seth running out of time. He is going to get to draw a 7th card now, so he gets to tap Library of Alexandria for a card. But it needs to be good.
Yeah.
Oh, it is a Blazing Archon. Wow.
1, 2, 3. So you can play a land here.
Yeah, he's not dead. He needs red mana to blow up a Mistress Factory.
Yeah, I think if he draws red mana on his next draw step, he's still in this game.
He'll get 2 draw steps because he'll stay on library.
Yeah, definitely. Play your land here, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
Because you need red plus green next turn.
All right.
Even something like a Ballista is such a powerful draw at this point in the game.
Ruby actually does an extra damage here. I was thinking Ancient Tomb wins the game. If Andy had drawn an Ancient Tomb there to activate both factories, we're just done.
Oh yeah, Ancient Tomb did win the game. Also, Mana Crypt, Black Lotus, lots of draws actually could win the game there.
Ruby means he gets to activate and pump. So Seth will find himself at 1, where fetch lands no longer help him get red mana.
Oh man, this decision to fetch this kind of leveling thing where you decide what land was going to get wastelanded is kind of really coming back to bite him, where he didn't get the red land on turn 1.
Kind of. I mean, it might have got wastelanded before there was anything to target with an Ancient Grudge, though. Wow. Preordain. We're not quite done. Preordain. 2 more looks at it.
Oh, man.
Jet. Bottom, Mox Jet. We're done. Unbelievable. Andy Markiton had to face down a turn 2 Oath of Druids with playoffs on the line, and he got it done. Mishra's Factory, second Mishra's Factory, couple counters from a Ravager, and Seth Manfield with a grip full of artifact destruction died to Mishra's Factory.
The humble assembly worker is able to defeat the powerful Gristlebrand and Blazing Archon. Stuck in the hand, nowhere to be seen. Wow, what an exciting game! Those, Andy really showed slow rolling his threats. He didn't dump his hand on turn. He didn't dump his hand early so that he could kind of play around the Oath of Druids, and he drew the factories and was able to close out the game with those.
Well, Andy Markiton through to the playoffs.
All of the 2-1 players advanced, and the 0-3 player was not able to quite get there. I did not think that was going to happen tonight. How exciting! Yeah,
no, I knew it was in play, but it was a tough pod. Lots of things could have happened. But you're right. The three of you that came in at 2-1 each went 2-1, and then we had Seth Manfield on the 0-3.
Yeah, and anything can happen. You're 3-0 one week, 0-3 the next. Hopefully that same thing doesn't happen to you.
No, that could never happen twice in a row. That could not possibly happen.
Yeah, this is the freak occurrence. The one time anything could happen, but only once.
Only once, exactly. Crazy. All right. Well, we had 3 playoff players, and like you say, next week there's another batch of 4. I am going to be playing next week. I come in as the 1-3-0 in that pot. I guess I'm the only undefeated player left in the league. Yes, I had to make Seth go before me so that I could make that claim briefly. Anyway,
that was smart. That was smart.
Yeah. It was random, but I'll take it. The rest of the crowd for next week includes Andy Probasco, Aaron Campbell, and Kevin Crone. So full split of records. I'm 3-0. Kevin is 2-1 going in, so just needs the 2-1 to advance. Andy is 1-2, where he needs to run the table. And Aaron at 0-3 gets to play spoiler.
Yeah,
she gets to play whatever she feels like playing, wrecking hopes and dreams.
Yeah, and she hasn't played Dredge yet, so we'll see if even at 0-3 she shows up with Dredge. But I could see her, if she brings Dredge, people are going to be ready for it. But I could even see her 3-0 in the pod and dream crushing a few people. So
sure. Yeah,
she is a master of that deck. It's like you look at an event like this, and at every pod, I'm just like, wow, how does anyone ever win? This is so freaking tough. And you look at it, and it's like, there's just 16 great players. So what are you supposed to do? Every pod is going to be tough.
Yeah.
I'm happy, though, to advance to the playoffs. My mom texted me, and she was really happy watching at home. So hi, Mom.
Makes sense. Yeah, no, congratulations. Should be a sweet playoffs, however it shakes out. 3 weeks left. See how many more people we get in. The full 3 out of this week is interesting. We could have a whole bunch of people in that first playoff show.
Yeah, powerful wizards with casting powerful spells. Excited to do more of it.
Sounds like a plan. Well, we'll be back next week. We'll have more powerful wizards, different powerful wizards casting, I don't know, maybe the same powerful spells, maybe different powerful spells. Probably different powerful spells. Hope you guys will join us then. Hope you've had fun hanging out with us this evening. We'll see you guys same time, same place next week. Goodbye.
Thanks.
CoolStuffInc.com is your home for everything Magic the Gathering. Need singles for constructed or kitchen table play? Looking to pick up some sealed product or the latest in Magic accessories? We've got you covered with our extensive live inventory. With free shipping on orders of $100 or more, a 25% buy list bonus, and our ever-popular customer rewards program, CoolStuffInc.com is the place for all your Magic the Gathering needs.